What about what Jesus said about oaths in Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37? It's actually pretty simple. If you're a good person, righteous, then there's no need for you to make an oath. Oaths had to do with collateral. In other words, a person might say, well, if what I say or do is wrong, this is what I'll pay you. So people would swear by the stupidest things. They would swear by the temple, even though they didn't own it. Or they would swear by the altar. And all that sounded good. It sounded holy and righteous, especially among the Pharisees. But they had no intentions of keeping their promises. And they couldn't give you the temple when they were wrong. So it was just kind of like, well, whatever. You know, if you're a good person, if you're letting God's righteousness live in you, then you'll do what Jesus says do in verse 37 of Matthew chapter 5. Jesus says, simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. And so we get to loving our enemies today, because if we can simply let our yes, yes be our yes and our no be our no, then we can move directly into this idea and concept of loving our enemies. You see, because Matthew chapter 5 verse 43 through 47 might be the toughest part of this whole series here in Matthew 5 in the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. It says, Jesus says these words, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. You see, He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? You see, there's two main elements here. One is the command itself to love your enemies. And we have to ask a very specific question. For God, is there any other person, way, groups of people to love? You see, at one point, we were all enemies of His. And without His all-consuming love and the sacrifice of Jesus, we would still be His enemies. God says, love our enemies. Why? Because God did it. And then the second element is the why. Why should we love our enemies? Well, it's not just a command to do so, but verse 45 brings us back to where we started earlier in the week, if you remember. Let's read verses 44 and 45 of Matthew 5. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. So why do we love our enemies? Because we're children of God. We want to look like our dad. We want to act like our dad. We want to be like our dad. And our dad loves his enemies just as much as he loves us. You see, we bear his likeness, not when we love our neighbor, even though that's the second part of the Great Commandment. We bear the likeness of God beautifully when we're able to love our enemies, when we're able to turn the other cheek, when we're able to forgive adultery and lust, and yes, even divorce. When we're able to move through the concepts that we talked to this week, when we're able to love those who in our mind we would set up as enemies because maybe they look different than us, or they act different than us, or they seem different than us. But if we hate our enemies, you know what? We're not sons of God, we're sons of another. And that's not a good thing. We won't hate our enemies. We will love them. We're not going to murder them. We will show them life. We're not going to commit adultery or violate our covenants because we love unconditionally. We will let our yes be our yes and our no be our no, and our enemies will see our humility, our trustworthiness, and our love, and they will know who Jesus is because of that love. And they might come to know Him as well. I hope that you can love your enemies today, at least start to work on it. I also hope that you'll join us tomorrow morning as we finalize all these devotions and wrap them up in a sermon tomorrow. We're going to be talking about salt and light and leading into verse 20, which is our core verse for the week. Join us at 8:45. Our live lobby will be up and running. Nico is going to be hosting it tomorrow. You can drop into the Facebook feed and say hello and just talk a little bit if you want to. You can send prayer requests to our office at bccchurch.com. You can message me if you need to. You can contact Liza at the office. You can email my personal email, msaskew74@gmail.com, and we'll be praying for you if you'll let us know what those prayer requests are. May God bless you. Have a great Saturday. And guys, I will see you in the morning. We look forward to it. We love you just the way you are.